from ragtime to jazz to swing to bebop. For more than a half a century, 2th Street reverberated with the life and livelihood of Richmond's black community. I'm standing in the projection room at the old Hippodrome Theater. Boy, if this place could talk. Such times. Well, today, memories of that golden era survive not only in this building, but in other buildings and the people of 2nd Street. It's a place of business, commerce, and entertainment, located in the heart of Richmond's historic Jackson Ward. In the late 1700s, black people began settling into the Jackson Ward. In fact, this area was one of the first settlements for free blacks south of Washington, D.C. They began building their homes along Duval Street and St. James Street. And later on, when the factory slaves arrived in Richmond to work in the city's growing industries, they too settled in the Jackson Ward. Still a little later, when Dutch immigrants and Italian immigrants and German immigrants began moving into this area, they built their homes along Clay Street and Marshall Street. And then for a short time there, just before the Civil War, black people and white people existed side by side here in the Jackson Ward, businesses and homes alike. After the Civil War, though, with the arrival of Jim Crow, Richmond's black community became increasingly segregated from the white community. Excluded from public accommodations, black people did the next best thing. They opened their own businesses. And soon, just like New York's Harlem and Atlanta's Sweet Auburn, Jackson Ward became a city within a city, and 2th Street was its most vital corridor. From the teens through the 1930s, there were a variety of enterprises along 2nd Street. There were real estate agencies and law firms, all surrounded by barber shops and confectionery shops, medical practices and financial organizations, all operating near the ward's 2 new theaters, the Hippodrome and the Globe. During the Second World War, military work generated extra income, and so there was a surge of activity along 2nd Street. By now, and this is the mid-40s, 2nd Street was an entertainment district known to blacks as far away as New York City. This was the golden era, the days of Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, talking movies, fine dining at Slaughter's Hotel, and celebrating military leave in one of 2th Street's pool parlors, cafes, or private social clubs.
So when I got out of the Army, I just couldn't wait. I've been to New York, but I just couldn't wait to get back on the deuce. And when I walked down the street, I said, man, this is it. I see with friends of mine, I say, hello, you know, Crawley, you back? I said, yeah, man. But I didn't tell them that I was very excited just to come on 2nd Street, because during that time, I couldn't come. Because the parents of that era, they didn't allow his kids to come on 2nd Street.
Certainly one of the great places on 2nd Street, in the 2nd Street it was the Armstrong Athletic Club. Nobody called it that, though. Everybody called it Tap Turner's place, because Tap Turner was the gentleman that ran it. And of course, it was just like an open bar, and of course, all that big doctors and lawyers to be there.
Now, some of the big-time entertainment that we had during those days was like, people remember these names, Five Satins, we had Ruth Brown and Amos Milburn. And I remember one of his songs, and it should have today, called Bad, Bad Whiskey Made Me Leave My Happy Home. And that would always be in the back of my mind. So now if I take a little drink, I think about Bad, Bad Whiskey.
Bridge, pinochle, and whist just played all during the night.
The line used to be so long that what I wanted to do was, I wanted everybody to see the girl I was with. I deliberately come late and walk about a half a block in the line. The guy said, hey, Crawley, who's that fine chick you have? I said, oh, man, wouldn't you like to know?
Of course, you could get a drink at the bar. And at the end of the bar, the free tray, that was, of course, reserved for special friends in the police. They could come in and just, any time of day, 24 hours. Taps was open 24 hours a day. They could just pour their little drink and go on out without saying anything to anybody. It was a very friendly base. And as you know, the police have ears. And that was one of the main ears that they had on 2nd Street.
Throughout the 1950s, black people owned and operated small businesses along 2nd Street. Businesses such as florists, barbershops, photo studios, hotels, restaurants, you name it. These businesses not only served black Richmonders, but they catered to black people from all across the country.
Rose and I met at the Golden Gate, the largest restaurant, black restaurant in Richmond. When we went there to get the job, we met there that day. And we've been there, we've been together ever since. And we specialize in Southern fried chicken. You could get a half a chicken and 2 vegetables and your drinks for $2. And you could get a half a fried chicken for $1.25.
I came over in 1939 and to a restaurant that the previous owner had. And I was pretty well advanced in cooking and serving, and when I came over, things changed quite a bit, and we had good business from the start.
My husband and I opened Brown Lunchroom. That was during the Korean War. And I had plenty of soldiers on the weekend. And on the weekend, I stayed open, 24 hours, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
I was a station over at Fort Lee, Petersburg, but they migrated over here, and the streets were full of soldiers. And we kept the dining room open all night. And soldiers were in the street like fingers on your hand. And they were spending money. They'd buy a Coca-Cola for 10 cents and give you $1 to keep the change.
Willie Mays, ball player, used to come in my place. Joe Walker, he was a boxer. Joe Louis used to come in there. And especially when the Harmonizer 4 had their anniversary, the Dixie Hummingbirds, different groups of quartets used to come in there. I had a nice business.
The unity of the ward was threatened for the first time in the 1930s, when a federally sponsored proposal to build low-income housing would have displaced hundreds of homeowners. Although this plan was abandoned, the Jackson ward increasingly became the victim of urban renewal efforts to improve the climate for the central business district. Changes in the face of downtown Richmond disrupted this community that had occupied this area since emancipation. Ironically, the civil rights movement and desegregation spelled the demise of the Jackson ward. Throughout the 1960s, as more and more of Richmond opened up to black people, these small and sturdy businesses here in the Jackson ward had to compete with other businesses in other parts of the city. Unfortunately, some of them couldn't do that and were forced to close their doors forever. Nevertheless, people still live here, and they're going to continue living here. And with the designation of part of the ward as an historic area, there's been renewed interest in an exploration of this neighborhood's past, a past that includes the Hippodrome. There is a promise of renewed prosperity. The spirit of 2nd Street lives on, not only in our memories, but in our plans for the future.
You remember a song called, I like to sing a little bit too. The Five Satiners, I made a song called In the Still of the Night. In the still of the night, how I long to hold you tight. In the still of the night, in the still of the night. I didn't know I'm making a singing.